Good afternoon. Haiti Oropesa with Florida You Judge. And we are joined today by Andrew Warren. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. So we have also Stephanie Pointer. She's guest hosting with me. And she's going to start off by asking Andrew some questions. This is a race uh, this race is this year, the election cycle. It's on for the new 4-year term in the Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office. We all have heard because it's been so much in the news about what happened 2 years ago with Governor DeSantis. He removed um, Andrew from office after he was duly elected. That was his second term. I supported Andrew on the second term, and I have some good things to say about you because I was harsh when you first ran in 2016. And once you got into office, you were nothing but incredibly respectful to me and professional, even though I was a harsh critic at times to you. And that's a good trait in a leader. That's one of the good traits that you have. And you, in your first term, you did good things. The wrongful conviction, that's phenomenal. And that's so important. And I don't understand why every state attorney's office doesn't have that. But through that effort of yours, through that implementation, Robert DuBois, he was exonerated. And that made headlines. Tampa City Council voted on giving him something to make some sort of reparation, which you can never really, make somebody whole after having spent a lot of years in prison for a
37.
crime. 37, thank you, to be exact. That's a lot.
It's a
One
lot.
day is a lot. 37 years taken from you for a crime that you did not commit. And Andrew, your office, was instrumental in that happening. So thank you for that and other things. So I just want to start off by saying that I supported you the second time. I supported Mark Ober in 2016 against you. And so Stephanie, go ahead and
Well, Andrew,
really,
I'm not gonna give you a big long drawn out because honestly, I didn't know anything about politics at that point in 2016 and 2020. And then of course, once the governor started playing dictator, then I became aware.
Sure.
Anyway, can you give us like the basic Andrew and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, how you got here, and just the quick for folks like me who
Sure.
didn't know anything about you to start with.
Yeah, of course, Stephanie. Thanks so much. And both of you, thanks for having me on the show. It's always good to be back with Florida You Judge. So I was born and raised in Gainesville. I grew up in Florida. I ended up spending most of my career as a federal prosecutor, and I really always knew two things. One is that I wanted to come home to Florida to raise my family, and two is that I wanted to be a prosecutor. And so I had the opportunity to be a prosecutor. I started off prosecuting street crime in the District of Columbia, spent nearly a decade with the Justice Department. And most of that time I spent prosecuting complex financial fraud cases all over the country. I had the privilege and honor of being able to walk into courtrooms across the country and announce Andrew Warren on behalf of the United States, which is such a tremendous honor. And it still, brings a smile to my face that I was able to represent and serve my country in that way. And then I ended up moving back to Florida. My second daughter was born here in 2013 and was still with the Justice Department for a few years. But when I realized that we had put down roots in Tampa and that we fell in love with this community and we were not leaving, that I really wanted to give back to my community rather than traveling around the country doing work for the Justice Department. So I decided to run for state attorney. And I ran because there were some things that we could be doing better in the system to maximize public safety. And again, because I really wanted to continue that public service in the community where my kids were growing up. So I was honored to have been elected in 2016 on a vision of making our community safer and fighting for victims and improving the system. And as Haiti said, she didn't support me in 2016. And a lot of people didn't. They didn't know me, but it's been so wonderful to get to meet people in this community and have earned their vote and earned their respect and earned their trust, from 2016 to 2020 when I won re-election by a wide margin.
I think that's a great summary. I think it hits all the bases. I guess the question is, the real question is, I mean, you're running for office, and people like me who don't understand a lot of legal stuff, and are watching the scenario in the news, in the media, and I've had a lot of people ask the question: if you get reelected, can DeSantis remove you again? And that's a genuine concern, at least for the primary anyway. But I mean, folks need to take that into consideration when they're deciding who to vote for on that little form.
Well, let's keep in mind that, the question is, can the governor suspend me? Is the governor legally allowed to? No. Will that stop the governor from suspending anyone he disagrees with? Maybe, maybe not. The law didn't stop him the first time. But the idea that we should hesitate to exercise our constitutional right to vote in the way that we want to, because we're worried that the governor or the president or the Pope is going to violate those constitutional rights and remove a duly elected person from office, that's ridiculous. That's not how America works. We don't need permission slips to exercise our constitutional rights, and we don't need to cower in fear for the governor breaking the law. So we fought back against the governor for this unconstitutional, illegal suspension. By the way, that's what the court found. And whether the governor is going to suspend me or suspend the next person or suspend someone else in a different part of the state, we should be voting for the person who is best situated to serve the community, someone who can do the job competently, someone who represents our values. And that's why I was elected twice, and that's why I'll be elected a third time.
Let me jump in. I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to preface my question with saying that I support you. My parents fled from Cuba. One of the big things is free elections. That's what is very important about a part of democracy. I don't support what the governor did. I believe it was politically motivated. Okay, so let's just start off right there.
Just to stop there for a minute, Haiti.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's what you believe, but that's a fact. That's what a
no. I understand.
That's what a court of law. No. I'm agreeing with you, right? I'm saying, because some people say, well, it wasn't. Look, this went to trial. A judge made factual rulings, and one of his rulings was that this was politically motivated.
I understand.
I want to make sure that all the listeners understand that too. It's not like this is your opinion. That's a fact.
It's not an opinion. It's a fact. I'm prefacing because then we're going to go on to kind of talk a little bit about the actual opinions.
Sure.
Because you're running in a primary. You're running against your opponent, Elizabeth Strauss. As much as I support you, Andrew, I wish you were reinstated today, okay? Just so you know. But there's a primary right now. You're running in it, and I kind of feel that her own party, I'm an independent. I was a Republican for all my life until I became an independent in 2020, because I don't care for either party, to tell you the truth. I care about good candidates. I don't care about red or blue. I'll vote for the candidate in either party if they check off all the boxes for me. But her own party is kind of, some members in the Hillsborough County Democratic Party are kind of, it seems like they're stigmatizing or ostracizing her. You had a quote from in Politico where they asked you for a reaction to her letter. She sent me and other people a letter that she addressed to you, suggesting that some voters are not understanding what they're being explained as to the pending case in the 11th Circuit that was appealed by you. You appealed Judge Hinkle. Hinkle held that, yes, your First Amendment rights were on two bases violated, but that there were...
And that's state law.
Okay, but
Judge Hinkle ruled that, and we can walk through.
I understand, but no. His opinion is this. I've got it up.
Yeah,
I got the
that's
opinion.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's saying, this is what he said when he ruled in your case. He said, but the 11th Amendment prohibits a federal court from awarding relief of the kind at issue against a state official based only on a violation of state law, and the suspension would have occurred even had there been no First Amendment violation. The First Amendment violation is not essential to the outcome. This order thus directs entry of judgment for the governor. So the governor wins, you appeal it, Hinkle's order, And now the 11th Circuit, 3 judges, they say you're wrong. You could have reinstated him. His First Amendment rights were clearly violated. However, we want you to reweigh this. I read the 11th Circuit opinion.
Yep.
They're sending it back to see, is there any other reason that has nothing to do with the federal constitution where the governor would have anyways removed him? And so Hinkle seems to have said that already, that's the case.
That's right. So Haiti, you hit the nail on its head, right? You just got everything right. The lower court found that there was a violation of state law and federal law, and it found, and we can get into the weeds a little bit because I know this is a show where we get into the legal weeds, but he found violations of state and federal law. He found that it was politically motivated. He found that the reasons they gave for suspending me were pretextual, which is, legalese for excuses, right? They had made the decision to suspend me for political reasons. Then they had to go find the excuse for it. And
So my question, Andrew, is Elizabeth Strauss, she's running. She has every right to run. It disturbs me when a Democratic party, her own party, she's been a lifelong Democrat. She signed an affidavit. She supported you. She said, if by the deadline of April 26th, which is the deadline to run, you had initially January said you weren't going to run because then you could be yanked off again. And make no mistake, there has been no order federally that says if you win, DeSantis can't yank you off again. So if you win and he yanks you out, he's not going to be held in contempt. There's no order that says that he can't yank you off again.
So you're skipping through a few things. So let's break it down, right? So just to go back to what you were saying, you said accurately that the appellate court has ordered the case sent back to the district court in Tallahassee for them to make a finding whether there was some other cause for the suspension without the violations of federal law. And as you pointed out, the judge in Tallahassee already said there weren't. The question has already been answered, which is the judge found that reasons for the suspension, which the judge in Tallahassee said were only violations of state law, the appellate court said, actually, those are violations of federal law. And so it's going to get sent back to reevaluate, but the evaluation's already been done. And so when the case gets sent back, I
don't know that I agree with that, Andrew, because Hinkle said that 2 of them, you were clearly, your free speech right was violated in 2 instances. 4 had nothing to do with the Constitution. That's why I'm a little bit at a loss when the 11th Circuit, the 3 judges on the panel that heard it, he said it's going to be reweighed. It's right.
Right. So
you're
right about the 2 and the 4, but what the appellate court said was that it's actually 4 and 2. And so again, to make sure listeners understand this, the lower court found there were 6 motivations for suspending me, and all of them were illegal. 2 of them violated in the Tallahassee court's opinion. 2 of them violated federal law. 4 of them violated state law.
The Tallahassee court is not involved. I know, but there is no Tallahassee court that's involved in the pending. Right? There's not.
Yeah, the Tallahassee court. The Tallahassee court is the district court where Judge Hinkle is in Tallahassee.
Oh, okay, gotcha. The federal court.
Yeah, the federal court. Sorry, I'm saying Tallahassee.
I understand.
Because a lot of people don't understand the term district circuit. So
gotcha.
The trial court in Tallahassee found 6 reasons. 2, it said, were federal violations. 4, it said, were state violations. By the way, it's important to keep in mind that none of the reasons for suspending me were valid under any law. But the court said 2 were federal, 4 were state. Then the appellate court in Atlanta said, you actually got that wrong. 4 of them were federal violations. 2 of them were state violations. And so they're going to send it back, but it's sending it back for essentially a balancing test. What's more, 4 or 2? Well, we can all do the math on it.
Okay, but at the end of the day, it's up in the air. It could be sent back to Hinkle to reweigh, and he could essentially say, I still make a finding, because there was a full evidentiary hearing, a trial in front of him with evidence and then he came to that conclusion. He could still say, I still maintain, as I did in the beginning, he found that your First Amendment rights were violated, but that there were other reasons that he could have, that he found after hearing evidence that he would have removed you anyways. But okay, this is what I want to get back to. In the political quote, Elizabeth Strauss says in a letter, she was going to support you. She gave you an affidavit saying, if you're reinstated before April 26th, I'm happy to step down to let you do your thing, because she's up in arms just like everybody else about you being removed in a dictatorial style by DeSantis because he's at odds with your political philosophy and ideology. And yet that we're a representative republic, and it's offensive for after voters elect you to, not once but twice, for him to have done that. But you said when you were asked for a reaction to her letter to you, okay, which I read the letter, I see nothing wrong with her letter. I don't think there's anything wrong with her letter. You said, I'm not concerned with dishonest negative attacks. I don't see where she has said anything that's dishonest.
Oh, and I'm not talking specifically about her. My focus, as I said, is about the November election. And anyone who reads the opinion, just like you did, can clearly see that the reasons for the suspension were all in violation of the law, that as Judge Newsom, he was one of the judges on the 11th Circuit panel, called it an input error, where, again, 2 and 4, right? The state court, excuse me, I said state court, the federal district court judge, the trial court judge, essentially said 2 reasons federal, 4 reasons state. 4 is more than 2. I can't reinstate you. And the federal court said, you got it wrong. 4 are federal and 2 are state. So again, yes, there's always a chance that a judge makes different findings than he did before. There's always a chance that the judge says, I'm going to change my mind about what I put in an order. But the likelihood is that the judge is going to say, the lower court judge will say, okay, now that I've been told that 2 of the reasons I said were violations of state law or federal law, that's all we need to be reinstated. The question is not whether I deserve reinstatement. The question is whether the case gets back to the lower court in time.
Right.
And earlier this week,
because let's be real here. Judge Hinkle filed his order last year at the beginning of 2023. In 2024, the 11th 3-judge panel sends it back, remands it back, vacates, remands it back, and says reweigh. Yes. You can reinstate him and start reweighing to see. And he hasn't done that. And you just recently filed something to say, hey, come on, giddy up. Let's do this. There's an election. I shouldn't have been removed. Could you do something about that? And nothing's been done.
Yeah, I think we're more diplomatic about it than that. But yeah, that's essentially.
I'm not in office. I understand. I don't use giddy up in motions or please.
No, I know. I'm joking. But yes, that's absolutely right, because it's been now, I mean, where are we? Mid-July. So it's been 6 months since the court's ruling. And the governor asked for a redo. He asked for a rehearing before the whole panel. There's no basis for it. And unfortunately, it's just caused this delay that's hard for people to understand, including me, why the case hasn't been sent back yet when the appellate court's findings were crystal clear.
Right. And so I think Elizabeth Strauss, who should be listened to, even that you're the shoo-in for the primary, okay? That's what the optics are, that you are probably going to beat, although she disagrees with that. But let her have her platform. Let her be heard. I don't understand the pushback against her. She has legitimate concerns that if you win in November against Susie, should you prevail in the primary, that DeSantis is going to do the same thing. And there's not a threat or any real risk to him of being held in contempt. I don't believe that.
Oh, well, the contempt issue is a little bit different. So first of all, you're talking about pushback. I mean, when Ms. Strauss came to me and asked me essentially for my permission to run, I said, you don't need my permission. It's a democracy. And she said, well, I promise I'll drop out if you end up running. And I told her she didn't have to do that. And I stand by that. So I'm not sure what you're referring to. But in terms of the contempt, so this has come up in a somewhat different context, but the possibility that if I'm reinstated and I'm suspended again, that the governor could be found in contempt. So one of the reliefs that we asked for is not just reinstatement, but an injunction against the governor preventing him from suspending me again. So depending on what relief is granted, it could be reinstatement, it could be immediate reinstatement, it could be everything we ask for, which is the reinstatement and attorney's fees, and an injunction prohibiting the governor from suspending me again. Then if that relief was granted and the governor said, I don't care what a judge tells me to do, I'm going to do it anyway, then you're in a situation where you have someone willfully violating a federal court order. You know, we've seen that happen rarely in history with an elected official, but it takes us back to Brown v. Board of Education, to desegregation in Alabama, where you had people say, I don't care what a federal judge says, I'm going to do what I want. And that it never works out well for the person who's saying that, because ultimately federal law and an order from a federal court is going to be enforced and upheld.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I didn't know that you had sought injunction relief. When was that? Because if in fact they give you that relief pending whatever outcome to the current issue up waiting to be adjudicated, then that would make sense. If you get a response, at least giving you injunctive relief, where if you win in November, he would be in contempt. But as of yet, that is not the case. Yes?
Correct, because that's part of the relief that we weren't given when the judge made the initial finding saying, Andrew, you're right on all the merits. This was a politically motivated illegal suspension, but I, as a federal judge, can't help you. And then the appellate court said, actually, you do have the power to reinstate Andrew. So again, we are optimistic that when the case goes back to the Tallahassee federal judge, that we'll get the relief that we asked for. And it's not just about relief for me and being reinstated, right? This was a violation of voters' constitutional rights. This is, I know your family left Cuba, right? This is something that you would see in Cuba or in Turkey or in the former Soviet Union, where the authoritarian or the governor or the dictator says, I don't care who won the election. That's not the way America works.
It doesn't. But and yet our state constitution gives the governor the ability in some instances to remove people, and he's done that.
True.
More so than many of his predecessors.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. So the governor does have a very limited authority, actually not to remove, to suspend, because if we're going to be precise about it, the governor can suspend someone, the Senate has to remove them. So I've been suspended but not removed, which is why I am still the duly elected state attorney here. But the governor's suspension power is limited to very narrow circumstances. And you can't do it for political reasons. You can't do it because you don't like what someone said. You can't do it because you don't like how they're doing their job. And historically, it's been used for when someone commits a crime while in office. If someone is physically or mentally incapacitated while in office, God forbid someone has a stroke or a car accident. That's what the power exists for. It's not, I disagree with how you're doing your job, so I'm going to suspend you, which is why, again, a federal court found that the governor's suspension, even for reasons that weren't violating my federal rights, violated state law.
And let's be real. If we were to scrutinize every single state attorney, there's going to be the ability to find, I believe, instances where they use their discretion in a way maybe that not everybody's going to agree that it should have been used. Yes?
That's right.
So he's nitpicking. He's cherry picking.
Yeah, you had the opinion, and I don't know if you can find it right there. I have it up. I'll
find it. Tell me which one it is. I'll get it.
In the district court opinion, the judge had a great quote about the differences of exercising discretion.
Which opinion?
Yeah,
go.
Disagreements about the proper prosecutorial approach are the stuff on which state attorney elections properly turn. Disagreements like this are not the stuff on which suspensions properly turn. So he was making clear that if he disagrees with how I'm doing my job, if he disagrees with positions I've taken, and let's focus on what those positions were, right? The main position that the governor disagreed with was my standing up for abortion rights, not just in the state of Florida, but across the country after Roe v. Wade was overturned, a position that 87% of Americans agree with. 87% of Americans believe that women should have access to abortion with some limits. And when these laws were passed, these 6-week and 0-week bans, that effectively prohibited all abortions. And I said, that's not good. And prosecutors shouldn't be the one going and prosecuting doctors and nurses and women. That was the real motivation for the suspension. But back to the judge's point, he was saying those disagreements are not the basis for suspension under Florida law. That's the basis for having a new election. And so if the voters disagree with my position, they'd let me know. But we know what happened in 2020. Voters elected me by a wide margin.
Yes, they did. So there's some questions I want to post them because I like this platform is for the engagement of voters and to inform the electorate and the public. So Dave Coleman has, and thanks for tuning in, Dave. But at this time, there is no guarantee DeSantis won't repeat himself. There is no date for the injunction decision. Hypothetical. If Elizabeth won in November and your court date finally came favorably, would she be removed as you get reinstated? That's a good question.
The short answer is yes. It depends, of course, on what the judge's order is. But I could, if I'm reinstated anytime before my term ends, then I can be reinstated for the end of my term. It's possible.
But wait, how is it? His question is, if Elizabeth beats you in the primary and goes in November and wins, how are you going to get reinstated? Because you were trying to get reinstated for this term.
Right. Well, the term doesn't end until January.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're right. Okay. Right? I stand corrected.
There's that. Now, again, you're asking to predict what a judge would do after an election. I'm not sure.
Well, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah. And there's also the chance that I'm reinstated day for day as well. So.
Okay. You're going to have to school me on that. I don't know. Okay. So somebody from Get Your Life, Real Crime Stories. I don't know who that is, but thanks for tuning in. What are your opinions on how the current public defender has been able to stay in office for 30 years?
So our current public defender, Julianne Holt, has stayed in office for 30 years. The simple reason is because no one's beaten her in an election. And the reason why is because she's done a good job and the majority of the county agrees with how she's done her job. And so she's had a couple contested races and a couple races where people didn't even challenge her, again, because when the community and especially the legal community recognizes the good work that she's done, then there's no reason to make a change. And I'm honored to have Ms. Holt's endorsement for this reelection campaign. We've had a productive working relationship together. We fight like cats and dogs in the courtroom over cases where we're prosecuting the cases and she is often in her office is defending them. But outside the courthouse, we share a vision for making our community safer and standing up for people's constitutional rights and finding innovative solutions that reduce crime. And she's been a great partner in that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but and I did catch yesterday in preparation for this afternoon's broadcast, the Tiger Bay Club forum where all of you were there. Rocky Brancato got up. He's her mentee, and he said that he asked was a question related, I believe, to your race, and he wanted to stay neutral, presumably because to get in his primary support from Republicans, Independents. He says that office stays politically neutral. They don't want to get involved in politics. That is not true. And if Julianne Holt wants to come on here and dispute that, but she has endorsed you, has she not?
Yeah, she has.
Okay, so she's getting involved. So I don't understand how Rocky Brancato says that he's staying neutral. But in any event, this isn't about that. But I just did want to make mention of that. There's somebody that is a call-in. I don't know who this is. Can you state your name? And if you have a comment, please go ahead and give your comment to us. Hello? Hello?
Well, are they on?
Are you on? You should be on. Hello? Hello?
That's okay. Stephanie, you had a question?
I do have a question, and this is my question. I asked at Tiger Bay, and I didn't get an answer. At what point do we take on prosecuting these people who are not locking their weapons and leaving them in their car, and these weapons are getting stolen by children and being used in crimes? At what point? And I cannot believe for 1 minute that there's not some moron in Hillsborough County who hasn't had at least 2 weapons stolen from his car. or. But I mean, even Ms. Lopez said that like 87% of these crimes are happening because of weapons that are stolen from unlocked cars. And there's supposed to be a Florida statute that says that that's illegal, that you are legally supposed to lock your weapon up. That's something that is really, really important to me because adults need to be held responsible for their adult decisions. And I realize that that's going to be something that's going to be highly volatile. But at what point do we start making the adults responsible for keeping these weapons safe?
And you did ask Susie Lopez when she came
I
on
did.
months ago. You asked her that on a broadcast, and then you
That's
also
it.
brought it up at the time.
It's my personal pet peeve because kids
I'm
do
with you.
stuff all day long.
I'm with you. It's extremely frustrating when you see that, the gun problem we have in our community. And let me just pause on that for a moment. We talk about public safety, right? And Ms. Lopez talks about public safety. One of the biggest problems we have with public safety, and crime has gone up the last 2 years, and gun crime has gone up a lot the last 2 years since she's been in office and since I've been out of office. And she talks about the gun crime, but she's not willing to actually do anything about it, especially when it comes to smart criminal justice policy. She says, oh, my job is not to get involved in policy. That's a cop-out. I mean, the reality is that prosecutors are invited to come to Tallahassee to talk with the legislature, to testify on bills all the time. And we are supposed to use our First Amendment rights as elected officials. That the Supreme Court has said that the First Amendment is at its zenith when elected officials are talking about issues of public policy. So when you have gun proposals like universal background checks, which would make our state safer, when you have proposals like requiring that guns be locked up and kept safe, that would make our community safer. My position is yes, we should pass those laws that make our community safer, and we should oppose laws like everybody gets to carry a gun in any place they want, schools and churches and houses of worship. Those are bad laws, bad for public safety. I've been totally transparent on where I stand on those. Ms. Lopez says, I don't want to get involved in that stuff. Yeah, because she doesn't want to offend the Tallahassee elite who are supporting some of these crazy ideas. Like everybody can have a gun and bring it wherever they want. So that's a little digression, but your question is, when are we going to start prosecuting that law? Well, there is no law that says, if a gun gets stolen from your car, then you're at fault. And we don't want to prosecute the victims of crime. What we want to do is make sure that people are incentivized and encouraged to do the right thing. And I applaud the efforts that have been made over the state and in the community to make people aware that they should be locking their cars at night and locking up their guns. It's just when people don't do it, it's hard. Like, what are we going to do about it? Right now, there's nothing you can do legally. We just need to encourage people to take care of their guns, to keep them out of the wrong hands.
Hey, you're muted.
So Pinellas County Sheriff Gualtieri, he has commercials out now on that very thing.
They've been doing it for years, which is really smart.
Right. Okay, so I think the caller is on now. Can you hear me, caller? Hello? Hello, caller? Hello?
Technology is great until it's not.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, while we're waiting for the caller, I'd go back to another point you're making. You said keeping guns out of the wrong hands. You are absolutely right. Like, it is so important that we keep guns out of the wrong hands. And we have a Second Amendment, and law-abiding citizens are constitutionally allowed to have certain types of guns with certain restrictions. But keeping guns out of the wrong hands means keeping guns out of the hands of criminals, keeping guns out of the hands of domestic abusers. My office, when I was there, we had a policy of aggressively disarming domestic abusers, using existing law to force people who have domestic violence convictions, domestic violence injunctions, to have their guns taken away. We had a policy of seeking mandatory minimums on felons in possession. That's people with a criminal felony who are legally not allowed to have possession of a gun. When they're found in possession, those people are a threat to the community. And so our general policy was to seek mandatory minimums. That policy, by the way, was rescinded by Miss Lopez just a couple weeks after she got into office. Maybe that's one of the reasons we've seen gun crime go up, is because they stopped aggressively prosecuting felons in possession, perhaps because they were so focused on the low-level cases that we had deprioritized.
Interesting concept.
Okay, so listen, I'm sorry for those of you that have tried to call in for whatever reason. There's something going on here that I have to troubleshoot, and I don't have time to do it now. Could you guys hear that ringing now? Could you? Okay. Hello. 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 Can you hear her?
No.
All right. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, we.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. What is? I don't.
Can you hear me finally?
I can finally. What is your name?
Rachel.
Okay. I don't know if you have a
Awesome.
question.
Hi, Andrew. I did.
Rachel.
I did. I've just been following along. I did have a quick question. I saw something recently that talked a lot about kind of the drop in the crime rate here in Hillsborough. And I had also seen another statistic recently that was more along the lines of the actual crime rate is only really dropping in terms of the non-violent crimes like driving offenses and things of that nature, and that the actual violent crime rate is actually at an all-time high and just kind of standing stagnant. Is there anything that, we should be worried about or be considering in terms of the difference in those two statements in terms of the accuracy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rachel. So we need to make sure we get our facts right. And you have them correct, which is during the 6 years I was in office, and that covers 5 years of stats from 2016, the year before I was in office, through 2021, when the latest crime numbers came out from the state. And we got to pause on that. We'll come back to that about the latest crime numbers from the state came out in 2021. Crime went down over 32% in Hillsborough County. That is the overall crime rate, which it doesn't include every single crime. It includes most crimes, and it includes especially violent crime and more serious crime. It is the single best indicator of the crime rate, and it's per capita, so it's based on population. So even as the population of Hillsborough grew during that time, our office, working with law enforcement, working with community groups, crime went down over 32% in those 5+ years. In the last couple years, we've seen crime go up. And we've seen violent crime go up. These are not my numbers. These are the statewide statistics on it. And we've seen them go up in Hillsborough County. And you don't need even the statewide statistics. I mean, you can just turn on the news and see the increase in shootings, the increase in violent crime we've had over the past couple of years. In parts of the county where there really hadn't been violent crime before, we've seen some indicators, some examples of violent crime there. So we need to reverse this alarming trend. We need to get back to doing what worked during my time in office, which is a comprehensive approach of aggressively prosecuting the crimes that threaten public safety, of making sure we are investing in prevention programs that reduce crime, and working with community groups to help us get the job done. That's what we did. That's how it worked. And that's what we'll do when I'm back in office.
Okay, so I don't have anything else as far as questions. Stephanie, I don't know if you do, but I'd like to give whatever time Andrew would like to address whatever other issues of his platform to be elected, not only in the primary, but in the general, should he make it there. Have any questions, Stephanie?
Nope, I'm good.
Andrew, the floor is yours.
Closing statement.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I can give a 20-minute PowerPoint if we want.
Let's make it short and sweet. It is
I'll
Saturday.
try to keep it short and sweet. I mean, look, I'm happy that we're able to talk today about the suspension and about crime, because really that's what this election is about. I mean, for the past 2 years now, I've been fighting for free speech and democracy and the rule of law. I mean, these values that we all cherish. And on the cusp of winning that fight, and we talked about it, we're this close, right? On the cusp of winning that fight in the courts and being back in office, I'm really excited to get back into the state attorney's office so that I can keep doing what I've been doing all along, fighting for the people of Hillsborough County, for parents like me, trying to keep our kids safe. I have 2 young daughters, for victims, and for every family in our community. And voters elected me because of my vision and my values. I wasn't illegally installed because of my politics. I won in 2016 because people trusted the vision that I presented, and I was reelected in 2020 with support from Democrats and independents and Republicans. I mean, that's key, because they had seen that success in action. They saw the crime rate come down. They saw the things that we talked about doing, right? Promises made, promises kept, right? We prioritized prosecuting the most serious offenders. We put our resources into increasing prison sentences for the most serious crimes and going after child predators and murderers and domestic abusers. And we, on the low end of the spectrum, we also invested in these prevention programs and rehabilitation programs and mental health and drug intervention, things that almost everyone agrees with, that are evidence-based solutions to reduce crime. And it worked. That's the bottom line. It worked. Together, my office, law enforcement, the community, crime went down significantly. We made Hillsborough County the safest large county in the state of Florida. And at the same time, we were able to make our system better, more fair, more effective, less wasteful of people's tax dollars, and keeping more low-level offenders out of the revolving door of the criminal justice system. So this is why I'm running for office. I'm going to continue to keep our community safe as I have. I'm going to continue fighting for victims, and I'm going to continue standing up for our values, speaking out on issues of public importance, and never backing down, never being afraid to exercise my constitutional rights or represent the rights and values of the people that I serve. So it has been a privilege and honor for me to represent Hillsborough County for 6 years, and I look forward to doing it again for the next 4.
Okay, well, I don't know who Get Your Life Real Crime Stories is, but they said they like you and they're going to vote for you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Real Life Crime Stories.
Thanks for coming on. You know that I supported you in the second term, and you did a good job. You did.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we've talked about this before, Haiti. It means a lot that despite our disagreements in the first term, we had open lines of communication, and you saw the work that I did, and I was able to earn your support and your vote the second time around.
And you weren't vindictive once you took office. Well, which,
look,
you know what,
my
some
job is to
leaders don't
serve
do that.
everyone of Hillsborough County, whether they voted for me or not. So that's what I'll always do.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back at 2 with Elizabeth Strauss. She's going to have a reaction. And Andrew, you're welcome to call in. You
Okay.
are. If you need to call in, you can, and it'd be not good if you had something to say while she's on. All right. We'll see you all at 2. We're coming back at 2 with Elizabeth Strauss. And Andrew's invited to call in if he wants to.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.